We are having 1 hour to do, should I say, our task. I will do a kind of introductory part, and we have a rapporteur, Tanya Ivanova from Reactor, gender civil society organization. Probably you know their organization quite good because they are also regionally very active with a regional civil society facility portfolio. So I would try to be brief. I'm not very popular for being brief, but I will do my best. For those who are not still knowing me, I'm Irina Ivanova from the delegation of the European Union here in North Macedonia, and I'm working in the portfolios of civil society, of course, and gender equality as well. Our topic is cooperation between civil society and the public authorities. I would start with the highlights of Michela Matuela. Today, she started with very important short sentence saying, if you want to have strong democracy, we should have strong society, civil society. And I think in this aspect, this is very suitable for our session today. And it's saying everything. I wouldn't explain that at all. I will also refer, which was also very much encouraging, what the Deputy Prime Minister for European Integration for North Macedonia mentioned, Bojan Marčić, who highlight the importance of government and civil society cooperation and strengthening the partnership and structural dialogue. But mentioned also very openly that EU guideline for civil society was a base for actually creating, or it's a very good sound base for installing the principles, objectives of EU guidelines in the strategy for cooperation with civil society, the new one for North Macedonia. So we already are answering also to part of our session topics that governments are seeing these EU guidelines also at their framework for installing these standards, which should be applied. Actually, the tendency of the EU guidelines is to apply these standards and to seeing the enabling environment in one unified way, vision, to have the same objectives and to speak with the same quality of language of quality, if you want, and measuring with the same indicators. And I think this example of North Macedonia is a good one. I assume also the other countries from IPA region, sorry, Western Balkan and Turkey. I'm program manager for managing IPA, so usually I'm using this name for this region. I think that this is also a good way of encouraging those governments that are still not seeing the EU guidelines as a framework for joint vision for enabling environment of civil society in the Western Balkan and Turkey to look at it. And I would encourage later on the speakers from other countries that would like to address this topic to share your experience in the countries, but also your opinion, how this is feasible. Yeah, I think it's okay. So I just would like to highlight just a few, let's say, potential points from the highlights I get it from Manuela and from Bojan. Practically, with these starting 2 points, we can frame our session today. It's clear that there should be a strategic framework for cooperation, development, but also for development of civil society, but also to be agreed jointly with civil society and government, and of course, in all-inclusive manner. I can share the experience we have with the previous strategy for cooperation with civil society here in the country, where we were having all-inclusive process, and the draft strategy came even to the parliament, the draft version, to be commented and discussed. So this was even in the headquarters discussed as a good example of inclusiveness. But we also today were listening from some of our experts that a good framework, it's not enough to have a change. Of course, all of the trilateral, should I say, parties that are involved in the EU guidelines implementation should be on the same page, understanding it. When I'm saying it's the European Union, actually European Commission and the delegations together, but also, of course, the governments and the civil society. So in order to have the synergy and joint approach for the EU accession, it's important to understand the democracy, further democratization, is working together with civil society, and working together on EU agenda. And why so? Because all of us are working for citizens of our countries to improve their lives, but also they to understand what is the EU integration all about, and they to be actively involved, not to wait or to speculate what is the process of EU agenda. And I think the civil society together with governments should be very much onto it, especially using these EU guidelines with new indicators, with the different references in the all aspects and life of the citizens and all of the needs that they have, and can measure how successful is this. What is also important, it's when I will speak from the experience of the North Macedonia. It's not all about the strategy we have mentioned a couple of times, and also the other contributors were mentioning it. We were having also other structural mechanisms for cooperation with civil society. Our colleague from the government, a long-lasting partner, Susanna, was mentioning the council, and this was one of the first babies that actually made it a great change in the cooperation with the government and civil society. And my experience working over 15 years in this area, I think it's important. It's one thing is a goodwill, but another thing is to have something of structured as a mechanism for cooperation and dialogue, and those partners to treat each other equally in the same agenda. Another aspect which I would like also to highlight for the EU guidelines and using this trilateral approach, and I'm very happy that today we are here physically. These are very much important regional events where government, civil society, and the delegation together are encouraging and learning from each other. This is also very important because well, for instance, our council at the beginning was having difficulties in establishing, should I say, a stable and regular structure of cooperation or sessions, etc. It's a learning process, but we also have learned from Montenegrin case before. How was it? So this is a kind of, should I say, regionalized the experiences and sharing with each other and encouraging each other for the best practices. On the end of the day, the enlargement region should talk in one voice, especially on these categories where we are speaking about fundamental rights, when we're speaking about democracy, rule of law, gender, youth, employment. All of my previous colleagues also from the Commission have mentioned a lot of new funding in the Economic Investment Fund, Green Deal, digitalization, youth, employment. So this is all should be translated in a program and projects. And this is something which is a joint task for governments and civil society. Of course, the European Union is to assist and to finance this process. And from my aspect, this is why this EU guidelines is so important. And when we are unified our voice and we are seeing the process in the same way, quality and vision, then the regional aspect is much stronger. And the cooperation among civil society and governments is much more of a quality one. Today, we are missing some of our colleagues from the government, even my colleagues, because they are on this Open Balkans event in Ohrid. And this is also another example of how regionalization is actually the way we should see it. I don't want here to go much more in details. I hope all of this is a good introductory part. So I would start the session by putting few questions which are already on the agenda, so you can read it. But in general, the question is how we can use the EU guidelines for strengthening the cooperation among civil society and government. We hear just before in the session that monitoring is very important, and I agree. It's a measure of all of our success. Lotta highlighted it's going to be done by the Commission on an annual basis. So we will have on annual basis a good frame for measuring whether we are talking in the same way, where we are seeing this, and how good is our progress practically on the end of the day. And also the suggestion that this is also our good additional tool for measuring the country progress in the enlargement process. So I will stop here. I would open the debate. So the question is how should we be better, how we can cooperate better, what way of mechanisms can be maybe strengthened or introduced new. Maybe you can share good practices from your countries. And also how, of course, the Commission can be also improving or be better with delivering all of the systems in the timely or in the adequate way to help the whole process, the whole region practically moving towards the EU accession. Okay, thank you. So who will take the floor? Thank you. Please just present yourself. Yeah. Yeah, you will.
Now, okay. Hi, this is Murat from Civil Society Development Center, Turkey. Directly related with your question, I would like to share, first of all, my personal experience. I was working in a public service a few years ago. I've just resigned. And when Lotte said that the endorsement of the EU guidelines, I go back to 4 or 5 years ago, and I was trying to draft an action document for civil society. I was responsible from the programming process of the funds in Turkey, and it was under indirect management. So the public authorities in Turkey was the contracting authority. I was totally aware of the EU guidelines. I have comprehensively designed and monitoring methodology and selected some indicators and put them to the action documents. Everything was perfect. But I have a little problem about referring to the EU guidelines. I checked the website of the TAXO, but there was a gap between the technical assistance team and the website is not working. I have tried to check the website of the DGNIA. Nope, there is no document there. I guess it is not still in the DGNIA website. So that the endorsement issue is very critical. To see that document in the DGNIA website is very important. And somehow I was trying to promote these guidelines among other public institutions, but there is not any reference in the DGNIA website. So the statute, the spirit or regulative qualification of this document is very crucial, I believe. I personally believe that. It's a good step, but it's not a part of the regulation or legislative environment. So it means almost nothing for Turkish public servants, because if it's not regulated in the EU acquis or national legislation, it doesn't exist. A simple thinking mind of public servants. So starting from this issue, again, there is an indicator here that's directly related with the discourse of this EU guideline. IPA beneficiaries have adopted currently valid civil society cooperation strategies. Nice, shiny words. But the problem is, after 20 years of negotiations in Turkey, my country is a garbage of action plans and strategies that no one reads. And please be sure, by experience I'm saying that, after 10 years, if Western Balkan countries could not be members, the same story will repeat here. And because the logic is simple. By doing the same mistakes, you cannot reach different results. So I'm wondering why don't we use or revise this indicator, as IPA beneficiary countries have adopted civil society cooperation, adopted a regulation on civil society cooperation, because EU acquis provides enough substance to us about the regulations. Also, these documents are referred. There are also always better regulation guidelines, and almost all EU member countries have kind of consultation mechanisms and etc. So I don't know if there's an answer for that, but if these indicators are written in a more concrete way, there should be a regulation. It is easy to say. There should be a strategy. But we all know that those strategies do not work. So it would be better to put all those indicators concretely to the guidelines. And finally, I'm completing. I didn't analyze all these documents, but indicators yet, but I believe that almost half of these indicators are not measurable in the Turkish context. I'm not sure about the other countries, but it will be the same story again after the baseline report.
Thank you very much for the open and honest talk. I would just maybe give you just one line of opinion. Indeed, the indicators are very important measure for instrument actually for all of us. And I think in the future also the delegations are having from now today we launch this guideline. We will have a good frame to transpose it in the action documents we are creating, and not only for civil society but all of the relevant, should I say, sectors where civil society is working, and there is assistance package, for instance, for them. So this indicator can be transposed. Now we have this, should I say, opportunity to do so. And I do understand the more sensitive political atmosphere and maybe not having that much stable enabling environment for civil society in your country, but then the civil society can use this guideline and talking with the same language in transposing the indicators now when we are writing, we are doing together programs, but also where you are doing the logical framework in the projects. And me as a program manager, at least here in North Macedonia, I will try to do in these directions and to inspire our civil society and future grantees to make the line of the projects that they are giving to us as an ideas and to make connection with the logical frame. So we're gonna talk with the same language of measuring our progress together. So this is one of the ways. Ekmel was, and then if you, yes, thank you, Ekmel.
Sorry, actually, I missed the beginning, maybe 5 minutes, but I just wanted to actually start also with something else. Coming from Serbia, where the national strategy, for example, for civil society has just been, or is in the process of adoption with the action plan. I mean, one of the things that I have observed in my past 4 years in Serbia is the trust. I mean, you can create any document you like, and you can also put indicators. You can come with indicators that really try to measure things in a, objective way, etc. What it all boils down to is trust between authorities and civil society. I mean, in one of the recent cases, I don't want to get into the detail, but like you see that the government does something on some sort of controls. When you go into the depth of it, you realize that maybe it wasn't such a bad, evil intended action, but the way it is perceived is completely negative. And, it's like the civil society is completely uncomfortable about this. So I think, one of the things that we always need to keep in mind because it really is a lot, it takes two to tango, yeah? And if we are not able to build a trust relationship between authorities and civil society, both at national as well as local level, this can be all, people can fill in boxes. Tezcan, if I don't know if he's here, but he might know, in one of the previous tax or regional meetings, we were looking at some indicators, and I follow Turkey a bit as well, because I'm interested in the country. And I was positively surprised that if you look at the indicators, Turkey seemed to be the leading democracy in the region. Everything was green, So I think it's really, we have to talk about the indicators and also see how we can use them, etc. But I just wanted to emphasize the importance of being open to dialogue from both sides. Not only the authorities, but also the civil society needs to be present and needs to be supportive, and the importance of having trust.
Ekmel, for this, indeed, also going in line of our colleague from Turkey, I think this is why also the monitoring reports that are coming on an annual basis should be a joint venture. So the colleague from Kosovo mentioned in the previous that civil society should be also part of the monitoring exercise, and to be quality assurance. Governments can also be, I mean, in North Macedonia, we have official structures where we can go through, but in the other countries, this dialogue should be open when this, and okay, of course, the Commission can be in lead of organizing these consultations and collecting the feedback from the indicators that are measured from the guideline. Yes, trust, it's a long way, of course, but I think this is the good starting point because indicators are our reality. But if we are seen from different eyes, then we can have in the middle the truth. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Somebody else? Well,
May I? Because may I? Okay.
thank you. First, present yourself, and yeah,
Okay.
you're welcome.
Thanks a lot. I'm Matt Rushidi from Kosovo Civil Society Foundation, National Resource Center, and pleased to be here and share experience and actually listening to the very concerns that each of you as us as civil society have, and what we can do in order like to have these strategies actually take place in reality, and so we cannot just like, as someone mentioned here, come back like every 5 or 10 years and discuss the same indicators. From someone with experience like in CSO in a environment in Kosovo, but also working with indicators, I see that I want to raise like two things that maybe we can discuss, and maybe we can just like share. I want your opinions. It's not your argument or something, but in terms of indicators, you usually have to consider the contextualization like of the indicator and where these indicators are taking place, because as someone mentioned here, like you can have like some like countries that actually have managed like to accomplish this indicator, but you have also some other that they have are in the process of accomplishing, or they are like really good in terms of documents and strategies, but when it comes to like in practice or real life, they lack that, if I may say, implementation. As someone who has been dealing a lot with indicators, I have to say, for example, that the second issue is that how we are going to measure that and against what, and who is going to verify that, because as Ekmel mentioned, it takes two for tango. So for example, you cannot just like, we are here civil society or EU delegation, EU or DGNIR, we come and like come up with the best English language types indicators, but when it comes in reality, like who is going like to assess and actually verify, because if you for example, go and ask, let's say, this indicator 2.1 that CSOs have access to the draft document from the very beginning of the drafting process to the end of the adaptation procedure. You can have like CSO that say, no, because we didn't have access, nobody informed us, nobody. But then you have another indicator down that working groups. I mean, I'm actually talking about the indicator 2.1, that working groups are part of the consultation process. So, I mean, the idea of measuring against what it should be like, I mean, just a suggestion, for example, if it's something, a law that includes like a business associations, or if it includes like a civil society, or if it includes like any minority groups, it should be like discussed with them whether these indicators have been fulfilled or not. Because if you can ask me if any law as a CSO, for example, raising taxes or something was discussed with business community, I might say no, because I was not part of that. But maybe business community is part of civil society, because also they are civil society, also media are civil society, not just like registered NGOs. So this is just my comments. And you should take like into very consideration that the contextualization of each country should be like as imperative in like drafting and monitoring of these indicators. Because I mean, I said, these are like, when you read, it's good English and everything, and like we've been doing this a lot, but it's measured against what, and who is going to verify that? Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much for this valid observation. Indeed, I would take the highlights from your views that one of the most important things is the source of information for checking the indicators. And in all of the countries, let's say, indexes or valid and reliable data, it's quite a challenge. But I think this is one of the tasks of the civil society, to be resourceful and in the way that you mentioned, going on the ground and consulting the final users, the beneficiaries, or in this respect, you mentioned the business community, practically constituencies of the civil society is very important. And this, for instance, in North Macedonia, in the council, we were discussing this a lot, because the civil society representatives there are sector representatives, so they are representing sectors. And still we are working out with our technical assistants at the moment to help the representatives of this sector to have a structural mechanism for going to the constituencies and seeing and checking the reality. And then we have a valid indicators on the end of the day. So maybe we can go in this direction of our discussion, how we can improve our structures, councils, implementation of the strategy, structural dialogue. What are the good practices in your countries, or something that is not functioning? We can have something as a good conclusion. Yes, welcome.
Hello, thank you. I'm Mina Rolović-Jotić from the Serbian Ministry of Human and Minority Rights and Social Dialogue. I apologize. As of last night, I somehow managed to lose my voice, but I hope it won't be unpleasant listening to me. And I can only echo what some of my colleagues have said and what you have mentioned. Now Serbia is in a place where we have been having a ministry for 1.5 years. We have managed to adopt a strategy for fostering the positive environment for developing of civil society or cooperation with civil society, although it hasn't been easy at the beginning. Since we are facing the situation where more or less in most of our countries, we tend to be more and more polarized on different sides, which is a totally wrong concept. We are supposed to be working together for a joint cause. And we have come to the ministry. Of course, it's not that we that we made a change, but we just made a very additional and very persuasive and constant effort for this. So we somehow showed genuine commitment. And if we failed to cooperate on the producing of this strategy and the action plan, we decided and managed to show that there are other ways of cooperation with civil society, and to show our trust to them, to show our open doors. And I'm sharing this now as a good practices. We established the Institute of Social Dialogue, where 1/3 of our dialogues, and there were like 25 of them held last year, were actually held at the request of civil society. For this dialogue, we managed to organize, it was like on our own, and we took it on ourselves to invite and to have the highest level representatives from ministries and respective stakeholders needed for such a meeting, and to come up with, for each dialogue, with some kind of obliging conclusions, obliging activities. I'm not saying it went perfect at the end, but it is a starting point, and at least everybody from those respective ministries who needed to hear what civil society has to say, which was clearly the problem, were there. And if the minister didn't stay for the whole day, for the whole time, then there was a state secretary or someone else high level who had to stay there and take part in these obliging actions and activities. So let's say this was the first year, and in this year we need to work on these real obliging activities and how we proceed. But we managed to get everybody on board at the same table to discuss real issues and hear each other. And I cannot say it went perfectly well and that we're satisfied with the result, but we're satisfied, and everybody is more content now with the way things are. On the other hand, there are other elements of our work that we're trying to engage the civil society, and we are engaging civil society to our best, even when it is not needed so. Even when we're producing the state report, for example, for UN committee, for the treaty bodies, we do not need at the end to have such active communication with, well, it's not prescribed, so to say, by the rules. Each country decides how to work on these recommendations that you receive, but we established a good practice. We had a committee against torture and committee of social and economic rights and cultural rights. And we held the joint session to discuss the recommendations of both treaty bodies with all the civil societies who wrote shadow reports, submitted shadow reports, and we discussed all of these issues together jointly to see how can we proceed, what will be the following step. And one of the conclusions is to have these kind of subgroups, of sector subgroups, where the communication would go much more easier than so far. Then we're trying we're having another big step where we hope to have the human rights strategy adopted in the upcoming years, if of course we manage in this composition to remain and to survive this change of government. That is the number one. Sustainability is of course a prerequisite. That is also a risk in all of these efforts and tasks that the single ministry is or the undertaking or trying to share with others. But in all of these efforts, and of course in producing this human rights strategy, civil society will be our main, not to say counterpart, but main ally, because they will be the ones to assist us in collecting data, in first establishing methodology, then collecting data, making sure that all the trainings are there, that their expertise is welcomed and shared with everyone, and at the end, hopefully to be there for the monitoring part of the strategy. And that is the big, why am I saying this is such a huge thing? Because we have all kinds of reports. I'm sure in other countries it is the same. We have all the reports from all organizations, from independent bodies, from international, I don't want to name them, and at the end, eventually annual progress report from the European Union. But we do not have our own report on human rights issues, on where we stand. We have all kinds of data from various strategies, various databases, but we don't have a single methodology, single database, a single system of collecting data and figuring out where we're falling short and where we're doing good when it comes to implementation of human rights. And this is what we will try to do in the upcoming years, because it's not such an easy task, but hopefully we will manage with the support of the international community, of course, and jointly with the civil society. I'm just sharing these few examples, not neglecting the fact that the situation when we came and founded, or when this ministry was established again, because in the meantime, in the past couple of years, we've been going back and office ministry or something else. But now I think it is founded very strongly, and it has good basis in the laws, and it will continue. But somehow we managed to get 1, 2, or 3 good practices that I hope will remain and will build this trust with the civil society, with us, and also with the support of EU. So these guidelines and principles will definitely be part of whatever we do in the future. And already, since we had the draft version from before, from a couple of years ago, we have implemented some of them in the strategy. So just to have everybody on board and to have a joint effort, and we will make some steps forward.
Thank you so much. Such encouraging information you gave to us. And indeed, I agree that civil society should approach the government in a way of partnership and offering something which is actually a valid and objective assessment where improvements should be done and giving them their expert opinion. Then the cooperation starts. I think for me, watchdog and monitoring, it's not saying only what is not functioning, but how we can together improving. And you are just giving us encouraging examples of this. This is so great. And I think it's very much important that civil society working in different political contexts and in changing political contexts, sometimes more difficult, sometimes more, should I say, open for cooperation with civil society. The most important thing for civil society you mentioned is the proactiveness on them. So they to produce something, to work, or to carry on with their work and to produce and to offer their expert knowledge in something which is valid and then the institutions can utilize. We have also very good, I don't want now to favorize North Macedonia, but I know the best, but I will just reflect your experience. We were having in 2014 the initiative of proactive initiative of civil society, which were around 12, 14, to establish so-called IPA mechanism for of civil society. Now they are called Civil Society Platform for EU Dialogue. And they have 300 members and they are sectorially divided, and practically they are helping now, they are monitoring the sector working group that we are now have established in the country and helping the rule of procedure to be improved. So with work of this platform that are also offering shadow reports of the work of each of the sector working group, ministries are there also, most of them willing to talk and to discuss how not only cooperation can be improved, but also the sector per se can be improved better. So thanks to that, now Mr. Bojan Maričić, the Deputy Prime Minister for European integration, already we have just recently been on one conference when they start discussing about changing or improving the rule of procedures. They're still in draft by having mandatory 5 civil society representatives each of the sector working group in a transparent way selected. So indeed, thank you very much for this. It's going in the same line, and the human rights strategy complements to that. This is a big one. Yeah. Please.
Hi, everybody. Very glad to be part of this discussion. My name is Aurelia Bozo, and I represent Center for Legal Civic Initiatives in Albania. We, in the same time, since December 2017, coordinate the monitoring network against gender-based violence in Albania, which is made of more than 50 organizations covering the whole country. I found this guideline as a real tool, as a useful tool for cooperation of civil society organizations with the state. And the first reflections that I had reading this was the first one, the effectiveness. The effectiveness was a real component in this guideline, which is really very important for all civil society organizations and the state too, because you know, it's not just important to have a number of civil society organizations which are part of the consultations of laws or sub-laws or strategies, but it's more important than this, how many of the commands of the recommendations of civil society organizations are confirmed, are reflected in the final strategy or in the final law or in the final sub-law. Regarding good practices, even in Albania, we have many good practices that I would like to share with you. One of these was the good practice of Center for Legal Civic Initiative for which I work in the consultation of the National Strategy on Gender Equality, the last one, the recent one, and the suggestion of us was to strengthen more in this very important document the issue of accountability. And it was really great to see how the representatives of the gender equality sector in the Ministry of Health and Social Affairs in Albania were contacting us to be quite sure if they reflected it in a good manner in the final strategy, you know. So this is one of the good examples that I would like to share with you. The second example is that there are many laws and bylaws, especially the civil law on domestic violence, which are really consulted with civil society organizations working on domestic violence in Albania, increasing, you know, the component of safety of the victims and even other components. The third good example that I would like to share with you is that civil society organizations in Albania working on gender-based violence are called and consulted in the process of preparation of the state report of the Albanian state for the international mechanisms like CEDAW committee under the frame of CEDAW Convention, Committee of Parties, or GREVIO under the frame of Istanbul Convention too. So this is another good example. And to go back to my reflections, the first one was effectiveness in how many of these suggestions of civil society organizations were confirmed, how effective is the role of civil society organizations in the oversight mechanisms in the country. I'm a member of the National Gender Equality Council in Albania, and to be sincere with you, we have been very active, and many of the suggestions that we have provided are confirmed or reflected in the final form, in the final version of these reports, but more is needed under the frame of this effectiveness. And I totally agree with you when you say that civil society organizations have to be proactive in this monitoring of the effectiveness, you know, of this role that we have. And the last point that I would like to share with you is the role of civil society organizations in monitoring. Reading carefully this guideline, I had the reflection that our role will be really very important in the monitoring, aiming to measure this effectiveness for which we are speaking, and also to measure other components as the component of gender. For example, it is very good to have under the frame of indicators the number of working groups for women civil society organizations. So we will be a very good source, you know, to have the right information to measure this progress on one side. The other side is that it was really interesting to see that another indicator was the working group from vulnerable groups, and intersectionality is really very important. And I think that it would be these civil society organizations working in this field which will be other sources of information. State also, I guess that there will be many sources. And the final source that I was thinking will be really the reports of civil society organizations and even the state for CEDAW, for UPR, for GREVIO, for Committee of Parties, because there are some specific articles in these international conventions ratified by the Albanian state which are focused on these issues. So I think that, yes, the monitoring is really very important, and the role of civil society organizations in this component will be really strong. Thank you.
Thank you indeed. You cover another bias field of mine because I'm gender focal point in delegation. So yes, I fully agree that, and Tanya is also a gender, coming from gender organization, but also dealing with gender platform. Indeed, you make a very valid point in a sense of, first of all, that even the first guideline when we created, started in 2013, I think this process started. And we were having a quite consolidated consultations with civil society in country and in Brussels as well. Again, with some of the representatives sectorially. We agree that this guideline should actually be a frame also for the for the commissions to practically being able to, in a well-structured and programming exercise, finance the expertise of civil society and make it available to the country. Because this is very important what you mentioned, it's that the expertise in our countries is long-term on civil society side. Institutions may change their persons, which in our political context are changing quite often, unfortunately. And here in the civil society, the expertise remains, and they are the best advisors to the institutions in all of the sectors in which direction they are. And especially, as you mentioned, the commitment from international treaties and the long-term expertise from civil society is going one with one excellent as an extended hand to the governments, to the institutions, for actually helping them in implementing the commitments from the international treaties, but also in legislation, as you mentioned, the suggestions from improved legislation and practice in the field as well. Thank you very much. This is also a very important point. How much time we have? 5 minutes more. The last thoughts, please do.
My name is Elvira Paioni, from Alpcontact, Albania. The cooperation between organization and institutions are very crucial for us, for organization, for our work. And this is very important, and I found very interesting this forum for us to learn. When I was did the application, which session would you like to follow? I chose the second, not for the fact that I have a successful story to tell, but to learn from you, because this is our gap, the work with institutions. We invite them in our work. We try to have them in our agenda, common agenda, but I'm sorry to say we failed to do that. That's this. I am looking forward to hear the story from colleagues to how to arrange that, and the most important thing, or what the problem we have is the citizens do not trust the institution. Even we are recently watching, or we are recently recognized they are not believing or having trust to each other. And this is not a good thing for us, for our work. Maybe in the future, I do not want to be the fatalist, but I would like to learn, and to this forum to appreciate as an opportunity to learn from others. Thank you very much.
Thank you indeed. Yes, please.
Hello, everyone. Just a short comment from me. I was brainstorming with myself, how do governments use these guidelines? And I was thinking in Albanian context, what should we do to make government transpose these guidelines in their strategies? And I remember that now Albania is drafting the cross-cutting strategy, the national cross-cutting strategy for integration and development for 2022 to 2030. So since it's still the very first draft that they have, we can, all of us here, we can advise them to transpose these indicators in order to make these guidelines in form of, since strategies are adopted by laws in Albania, we can make a legally binding document for civil society in order to monitor them afterwards. This was my comment. Thank you.
Excellent. I'm glad that you were inspired. And this guideline is coming in the right moment in your context, so you can utilize for this strategy. It's yeah, great conclusion. So I think we should wrap up now. I was given a sign. Tanya, would you like to mention something as a wrap up, and then we can, Tanya will be our rapporteur as well.
Thank you. I wasn't aware that I'm going to be the rapporteur, but I'm happy to do that. And I didn't want to take your time to comment, but most of you have already said what I wanted to share, even in the other room, because there is not enough space to share all our bad and good practices. Luckily, we also have good practices. We are talking about cooperation between government and civil society and effectiveness of consultations of the civil society. In the new guidelines, there is a specific indicator under point 2.1a, which refers to exactly the effective consultations. And line 4 says, report on results of public consultations, including reasons for rejection of comments, are published in timely fashion. These reports are science fiction for us now, and if we see them published, we will be very happy because it will be a real result in near future, and I think it's possible because we spend a lot of time on commenting laws and strategies, and I see very good examples from the region, but when it comes to implementation or what has been accepted from our consultations, it's always difficult to assess because sometimes we don't receive any feedback. So in line with this, I think that we have mentioned everything, and that yes, it will be very difficult to measure this, and what everybody said, the contextualization of the indicators is very important, especially because we live in societies where the civil society organizations are a universe that is kind of clouded, just because we don't have updated registers for civil society, and we have an ambitious data collection behind this document. So to start with the universe where we have to do the sampling, it will be very difficult to do the sampling, and I know that because I'm a researcher. So I would argue that it will be very important for all the actors to sit down and discuss what should be measured and which civil societies should be taken as an example to show progress.
Super, Tanya, thank you very much for telling the truth and nothing but the truth. But I think open talk, it's the right way. It was very fruitful. Tanya will report what we have concluded. And as we can see, I just want to highlight one thing, that regionally we are definitely stronger. We share our best practices, our also not that good examples, but we learn from each other. And I think this is the way. So TAXO will carry on in organizing these events to be together again. So